morning or afternoon based upon where you're located. This is Stuart Blumenthal, and today we are going to be going over Sage Intacct Construction Payroll. This is an awesome module that Sage has been working on over the last, several years, and we were part of the early adopter program of this and have watched it really mature. We've got a good number of clients now running on it and having some great implementations. And so we're excited to actually have the team from Sage and Penta and Struxy on this call to help us out doing a majority of the presentation today. So the goal is to have them teach us some of the tips and tricks. We'll start off with an introduction of what the product is and then dive into some of the tips and tricks of that today. So from a quick logistics, we've budgeted about 30 minutes. It might go a little bit longer, might go a little bit shorter. During this time, all the phone lines are muted. Sorry about that. So please just use the questions feature within there. And if you want a copy of the presentation, just like normal, please just put your email address in there and I'll make sure an email address is, make sure the PowerPoint is sent over to you. Last thing before I turn it over to them, we do have some upcoming webinars. The next one is our Sage Intacct WIP reporting. We're going to be talking about WIP in terms of reporting and dashboards. So if you haven't got that link, let me know. Happy to send you over the registration link. But since you signed up for this webinar, more than likely you've got the registration link for that one. So, and then we're going to have a couple last ones throughout the year. We'll have one on the new R4 release that's coming out in November, and then we'll do our famous year-end planning one that we have at the end of the year. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Kyle.
Fantastic. Thank you, Stuart. Hi, everybody. I'm Kyle Higginbotham. I'm product owner for the Sage Intacct Construction Payroll product, which we at Penta call Struxy Labor Cost Management. And I'm really excited to talk with you today. I want to provide you a little bit of what the product is, who we are, and give you just a little bit of feedback or a little bit of context around that. So we at Penta, we've been in the construction industry for quite a long time. Over 55 years of expertise in construction software. We have seen the highs and the lows of construction accounting. One of the core differentiators of our ERP platform is the ability for construction companies to see their fully burdened labor costs in our payroll module. And so when we were looking at what the future holds for the technology in the construction industry, we saw value in taking the granularity and the precise calculations of our payroll module and positioning that as a point solution, a point SaaS software solution. And so thus was born Struxy Labor Cost Management. And we entered into a reseller agreement to white label our product within Sage Intacct with the construction CRE. So we get the intricacies. We've seen the highs and the lows. We've seen the complex all the way down to the simple. And we've built our product to scale and handle each of those scenarios for our customers. Next slide, please. So I want to talk a little bit about what the product is, how we position it to customers. So the value proposition for Sage Intacct Construction Payroll is really two-pronged. First and foremost, we provide the operational decision makers within your construction company the ability to see fully burdened granular labor costs directly in line with the GLs. Now, why is this important? This is important because you need the ability to see what your costs are going to be when you are bidding on a job. And you need the ability to see at a daily cadence, are we on track? Are we overspending? Are we underspending? Etc. And so we provide all of that as the primary value proposition for the product, the ability to see those labor costs and make informed decisions based on them. And then we integrated that into the payroll, or we integrated that value proposition into the payroll functionality such that we're providing a fully streamlined time to pay, to paychecks, to general ledgers process for payroll staff to follow. Once all of the configurations are set up and once all of the once all of the rules associated with the way that you do payroll is configured, the process is as simple as load time, press a button, all the way straight through to the GLs. Next slide, please. So what differentiators does Sage Intacct Construction Payroll give you as a customer? First, you'll know exactly how much your labor costs. We'll show you the fully burdened granular labor costs associated with your job at the cost code level, all the way down and directly connected to your GLs. Second, you can be more confident in your project estimations. You can see as you're going through the project, as you're moving that project to completion, are we on track? Are we off track, etc. And then for future projects, you'll be able to bid competitively without worrying about the hidden costs or using a sort of a blanket or bucket estimate for what your labor costs will be. You'll have all your information in the same place. We connect directly straight back to the GLs at that high level of granularity. Ultimately, all with the goal that you can turn payroll from a liability into an opportunity for your company. All right, next slide, and I'm going to turn it over to Randy.
Thank you, Kyle. So from a construction payroll standpoint, one of the key items are what we would call the cascading hierarchies. So it allows more from a configuration standpoint, and the intent is to reduce or eliminate as many manual adjustments on the time cards or within the checks windows themselves. By that I mean allowing the user to create workers' comp classification codes at various levels within the configuration, employees, jobs, trade levels, rather than forcing that information to be entered and tracked as a manual override on a time card. Still is available, but the intent is build the rules into the system, treat the checks and the time cards as those true exceptions. From a configuration standpoint, as we've talked a little bit about that, the data as it relates to construction payroll, there's multiple ways that that data can really come into the system. The data can be manually keyed in, of course, but to that second point, we also provide a number of wizard-guided, real-time validation imports. So as the users are bringing data into the system, they can do it manually if it's a handful of records. If we're talking 50, 100, 500 records, we have imports that will validate the information, make sure that we're not bringing, I don't say garbage data, but bad data into the system that would impact the check calculation. But really those imports, there's no structured format, meaning the file can include the columns in whatever layout. Those columns can be named whatever you want to name them. So I know that there's been some systems where it's a predefined layout. Here, as long as you really have the required data points, that's really what the payroll module needs. Doesn't matter what order, doesn't matter what the naming convention of those are, as long as those are included in that import process. From a pay rate standpoint, here in construction payroll, there's multiple levels at which a rate of pay can be driven or defined within the application. Prevailing wage rates, employee analysis, employee versus the prevailing wage rates on the job. Are there union compensation tables? So is the employee a union employee? Is he working on a job for a different local? A number of those items could be overridden on the time card, but as we talked about earlier, majority of those data points, what union local is the employee assigned to, what union local is the job assigned to, what's the employee's work classification, are they an apprentice, are they a journeyman, are they a laborer? All those items as relates to the configuration will drive into that check and that rate determination. Once again, certified, union, employee, does the employee have an add to rate associated with their employee profile? All of those are built in, and then as the checks are generated, the system will look up the rules that have been defined and incorporate that into the end result. Next slide, please.
Hey, Randy, I'm sorry. I can take this slide.
Sure.
So when we look at the Sage Intacct construction payroll, one of the reasons that we chose to white label within Sage Intacct was because we saw that there is a large opportunity to help the Sage 300 and Timberline customer base modernize. And so some of you may even be on the Sage 300 platform right now. And so what we set out to do was to take the intricacies of the Sage 300 platform, worked with the Sage team to understand those, and make sure that we had incorporated all of those into the product and into the product feature set. And so while we are a white label product, we're seamlessly integrated with Sage Intacct at that level of granularity that Sage 300 provides. What does that seamless integration mean? It means you can synchronize payroll information with the general ledger to get that comprehensive financial reporting. It means that you can streamline your job cost tracking with automated job cost subledger updates. You can simplify your payroll disbursements with automated standard ACH processing. You can reduce manual effort and increase efficiency. Like I said earlier, once you have all the configuration down, pay period over pay period, it becomes enter time or enter or import time, button press, all the way to your GLs. And then by leveraging our time card import feature, you're able to eliminate duplicate data entry. All of the intact master records for jobs, for cost codes, etc., all employees as well, all synchronized in real time with Intacct construction payroll. Next slide, and back to Randy.
So one of the other concerns that we've seen within the market, and we've seen with some of the other users, is just tracking information as of the appropriate point in time. By that I mean, as tax rates change, as benefits change, how does that and when does that information actually get into the system? What's the timing of that? How do I prevent or minimize some risk of data not being entered into the application appropriately as of the needed point in time? Within Sage Intacct Construction Payroll, everything and anything associated with the payroll check itself is associated with what we would call an effective date. That effective date ultimately drives what is included or excluded within the check process. It also allows for some future dating, and I use taxes and benefits as the example. I could use certainly a current date to put or to enter something onto somebody's profile. If I know something though is going to be in effect in 2 weeks or 2 months or 2 days, the Sage Intacct Construction Payroll module allows me to put that entry in with a future date. Basically, that entry sits out there and it isn't utilized until the end user actually starts processing as of that point in time. Great example would be, end of October, October 1st. If rates are changing as of October 1st, I can put those rates in right now. They're only going to be utilized for October related transactions. Any activity currently happening in September would utilize the existing rates. So it allows the end user to not be forced to complete September, put in the October date or record, and then transact in October. It allows for that transparency of those records. It builds an audit trail of the employee's rate history, the employee's status history, the employee's withholding information. And that's key, especially as it relates to, let's say, payroll adjustments. And as we know, time happens to get charged to the wrong job or to the wrong cost code over time. As that payroll adjustment is recorded, we want to utilize the existing source transaction date, which might be in a prior month, might be in a prior quarter. And with that historical transparency, with those effective dates, the payroll system knows what was in effect as of that transfer date or that transaction date, and it will utilize that to move costs from, let's say, one cost code to another, or from one job to another within the payroll module. Next slide.
Randy, I can take this one as well.
Sure.
So we talked about the value proposition for Intacct Construction Payroll being the ability to take your time in the field associated with all of the complexity of your company's payroll calculations and parlay that into visibility into the fully burdened labor costs directly associated with the general ledgers. But you know, all this is great, but why? Why do we do this? We do this so that operations can make the best informed decisions for your business. And also so that the overhead that's generally associated with payroll of having to move lots of data around, do duplicate entry, or apply some of those complex calculations manually, all of that streamlined, automated within our product. And also in line with the seamless integration with Sage Intacct, we provide all of our data to the Sage Intacct ICRW, the reporting engine, so that you can run all of your reports within your financial accounting system and don't have to rely on multiple systems to get that data. And last but not least, we've seamless integration with Atrix through the Intacct platform, which allows you to generate your tax forms and documentation when year end comes around. Next slide. We're here to answer any questions that you may have about the product, about specific aspects of the product, whatever questions you may have.
Don't see any questions that came in from the chat here, so I don't see any that came in from the chat.
All right. Well, we'll be here to answer questions. Randy, do you want to toggle over? Were you going to provide some additional tips and tricks?
I can certainly toggle over to the application itself, sure.
Perfect. If you can do that, that would be great. I'm going to make you the presenter. Give me 1 second, Randy.
Awesome.
Make presenter. Awesome. You are now the presenter.
Okay. Can everybody see my screen at this point? Just want to confirm that.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So as we talked a little bit about this before, Kyle alluded to a number of these items. Really within the construction payroll module, one of the main endpoints that we're looking at ties in a lot of what we were just talking about: the configuration, the effective dates, the labor cost components, the posting of those transactions. Really, we see that quite well here within this particular, let's say, checks window. So it allows me to go in here and I'm going to toggle back real quick. It allows me to see within this area who the employee was, gross earnings, net pay, company paid benefits. All of the information that we see here is based off of our configuration, right? So we're heavy on the configuration because we want this process to be as lightweight as possible. Alan's got just north of 2,500. He's got his net pay, company paid benefits. As I drill into that particular check, this is now where I'm seeing what were his hours, any reimbursements, basically other pay entries as well, deductions, taxes, net pay. But then at the same time, what company paid benefits and taxes do we also need or want calculated as of that or within that check process to build in that fully burdened rate? So we have our labor hours at rate over here, but then also at the same time, we may want to charge the employer portion of dental or medical or vision to job cost on an actual basis. And within each of those transactions, the payroll system, based off the configuration, will display exactly what job cost type and cost code was the source of that transaction and the amount related to that. Ultimately, the goal here, of course, is to generate that appropriate payroll check amount. But at the same time, we want to make sure, based on the configuration, that we're allocating the cost to the jobs, whether it's on an actual basis, an estimated burden percentage, or potentially standard charge rate within that application. From an integration standpoint, real quick, as we see, payroll is just another menu option within Intacct. So no separate user ID. Security maintenance is no different than accounts payable or accounts receivable. From an integration standpoint, all employees, all jobs, cost types, cost codes that we see here affecting this payroll check are coming in from Intacct. So there's no manual duplicate maintenance of cost codes that end users have to perform. Those cost codes are automatically being made available. The general ledger accounts are being made available from a hosting standpoint. And on the back end, as those checks are being calculated and being processed, we're really utilizing this window to facilitate that posting to job cost or to the general ledger, generating of the ACH record itself, making those hours available from a billing standpoint, as well as reporting. So all of that information is happening within this single window, but it's making that information now available in the appropriate format in Intacct to bill, to generate my job cost reports, to generate customer standard reports, and also to view my general ledger activity. We talked a little bit about, briefly, some of the effective dates. So as I look at the employees, and really, like I said, the effective dates, whether it's employees, jobs, pay modifier, or deductions or reimbursements, it's all going to be managed and tracked within those master records. So if I look at one of my employees, for example, everything on his employee profile, rates of pay, or master information, rates of pay, deductions, reimbursements, company paid benefits, taxes, withholding information, as well as PTO balances, but everything here is driven based off of those effective dates. So if I know a rate's going to change, then let's say I know it's going to change as of 1/1 of 2024, I can come into this window, pick January 1st of 2024, enter in those rate changes. If I can do that here in advance, and I'm just going to put in all three real quick, save that, and like I said, the payroll system will see that history. It will know when to utilize that history based off of the work date on the time card. So really that time card work date and that check date, the period end date, is really driving when those deductions or those reimbursements, what rates of pay, what withholding information is to be utilized within that check process. As we get into some of the other hierarchies, we talked a little bit about some of the cascading hierarchies. Within the employees or within the jobs, there's multiple components that can be assigned. So we talked a little bit about workers' comp, general liability, rates of pay, but within the jobs themselves in payroll, we have the ability to specify multiple parameters that fall in line with multiple lookups. What taxes should be calculated for time cards charged to this job? Payroll system compares what's on the employee versus what's on the job, looks up various reciprocity rules if they exist, and determines which taxes to calculate. From a union standpoint, for those union contractors, what local is assigned to the employee, that's on their profile. What local is assigned here on the job. Behind the scenes, the payroll system will look to see home local, work local, are the reciprocity rules in play, and will automatically assign those to the time card within that check process. And workers' comp is another example of that. I can assign workers' comp classification codes at the job level, specific to an employee, or more generically, based off of their trade level classification. from a reporting standpoint, talked a little bit about this as well. Number of options. Reporting extracts, more on the, I want something in Excel, I can put it into a pivot table. We have an existing integration with Atrix, similar to the Sage 300, in that Payroll will provide the data to Atrix to generate the form based on which form the end user selects. The last, more generic option, more specific to Intacct, is really a standard set of reports that Sage has created within the Intacct ecosystem for the end users to utilize, for you to utilize to generate those payroll data points. So tax totals, tax registers, deduction or reimbursement registers. It's also here that I can, or working with Stu and his team, be able to generate any custom reports within the application, still based off of the same payroll data, but maybe in a different format, or it's an existing report with a couple additional data points there. I'll go ahead and leave it open in case there's any additional questions right now. Stuart, I don't know if there's any that have come in.
Yeah, there's one question came in. Is there any charges for, or additional charges for the Atrix?
So from a charge standpoint, the understanding is if you're simply having them generate the forms for you, there's minimal, if any, charge. If you want them to actually perform the e-filing and some of that for you, then there's some additional charges that would be coordinated through directly with Atrix. So it's not uncommon for a number of our customers simply to use it to generate the reports. They'll file them themselves. Others have chosen to file them through Atrix, in which case there's some additional charges there.
Another question that came in was, for the payroll implementation, does that need to be done at the same time as Sage Intacct, or can it be done afterwards?
It does. Typically, the preferred approach would be that they're both done at the same time. It could be done after the fact, but I think we're seeing more people wanting to bring payroll in at the same time as Intacct, mainly because you're going to learn certain information within payroll that might affect your configuration in Intacct, and you might have some items within your Intacct config that might change depending on how you're going to roll out payroll. So it could be done either way. I think the preferred is that they're both happening at the same time.
And I think one of the last questions was, is there a preferred time frame? Like, how long does the implementation usually last, or a preferred time to go live? I think there was a couple questions.
I don't necessarily know that there's a, and I'm stop sharing at that point. I don't necessarily know that there's a preferred time to go live. You can really go live at any point. If we typically will see individuals potentially go live on a quarter end basis, just from a tax filing standpoint, but there really is, like, we've had end users go live mid-quarter, mid-month. It all depends on like I said, the amount of data that they're looking to bring over. If you do a mid-year implementation, we have to bring over earnings into the payroll system to facilitate end-of-year reporting and quarterly reporting. But the short answer there is it can be done really at any point within the calendar year. It's just a matter of then coordinating some of your year-to-date values being loaded into the application.
I'll add on as well that we really want customers to go live as quickly as possible so that they can recognize the value of our product as quickly as possible.
Perfect. I do not see any other questions from the group, so perfect. I appreciate you guys answering these. So just to kind of end on this note here, so first of all, if there's any questions you do have regarding the construction payroll module from Sage Intacct, please always feel free to reach us out here at ETHOSystems. We can make sure you can see a demo, or if you actually are an end user, just please always feel free to reach out to us if with any questions you might have. Want to thank Randy and Kyle. Thank you guys very much for your time today. Really appreciate you guys spending a little time educating our team and making sure that our clients are updated about this. And with that, I will call today. Thank you very much for everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good rest of your day.
Take care. Bye-bye.